I have spent 10 years becoming the kind of king who never breaks, and tonight, I will prove I can break one more thing." The entire Frostvale Hall went silent. Alpha King Adrian Blackthorne stood beneath the crystal chandeliers, his black coat perfectly arranged, his expression colder than the winter outside the palace walls. For 10 years, everyone in the kingdom had known the same truth. Adrian Blackthorne did not laugh. He did not smile. He did not allow anyone close enough to remind him that he was anything other than a ruler. The pack called him the Silent Alpha King. Some admired him. Some feared him. But no one truly knew him. Not even the people who stood beside his throne every day. "Your Majesty," Beta Lucian Vale said quietly from behind him. "The ceremony is almost finished." Adrian gave a small nod. "Good. One word. Calm. Controlled." Exactly what everyone expected. Then, from the back of the grand hall, a sound broke through the silence. A laugh. Not a polite noble laugh. Not the careful sound people made when they wanted to impress royalty. A real laugh. Warm, unexpected, and completely out of place inside a room where everyone measured every breath. Adrian's eyes moved toward the sound. For the first time in years, the Alpha King looked surprised. Standing near the Royal Archive entrance was Evelyn Hartwell, an Omega assistant holding a stack of old records against her chest. She had clearly not realized half the kingdom was watching her. "I'm sorry," Evelyn whispered to the nervous young archivist beside her. "I just never thought a royal document could be this dramatic. Someone wrote 3 pages about a missing teacup." The archivist covered his mouth, trying not to laugh. Evelyn looked up and froze when she saw the entire hall staring at her. Especially him. Alpha King Adrian Blackthorne. "Omega," one of the council members said sharply. "You are inside the royal ceremony hall. Know where you stand." Evelyn lowered the documents slightly. "I know exactly where I stand, sir." Her voice remained calm, apparently next to a very serious discussion about a teacup. A few guards looked away quickly, hiding their reactions. No one joked around the Alpha King. No one. Adrian should have been angry. He should have dismissed her immediately. Instead, something inside him shifted. Deep within his wolf, shadows stirred. Not with warning. Not with anger. With recognition. Adrian's breath stopped for half a second. Impossible. The bond was quiet, buried beneath years of discipline and control. Yet the moment Evelyn looked at him, he felt something he had not felt in a decade. Warmth. "Your Majesty?" Lucian noticed the change. Adrian quickly turned away. "Continue the ceremony." But Evelyn had already noticed something strange. The man everyone called heartless did not look angry. He looked tired, as if he had been carrying a weight no one else could see. Later that evening, Evelyn returned to the archive, unaware that the Alpha King had asked for her name, unaware that his wolf had reacted to her before he even understood why, and unaware that the woman who laughed at a forgotten teacup would soon become the first person in 10 years to make Adrian Blackthorne remember something he thought he had lost forever: how to smile. The next morning, Evelyn Hartwell discovered that making an Alpha King curious was much more dangerous than making him angry. The Royal Archive had always been the quietest place in Frostvale Palace. The only sounds were turning pages, the soft movement of old wooden shelves, and the occasional complaint from an ancient record keeper who believed every new filing system was a personal insult. Evelyn liked it that way. Quiet meant she could work. Quiet meant nobody asked too many questions about the strange way she could sense the emotions left behind in old objects. But that morning, quiet disappeared the moment the palace doors opened. Evelyn Hartwell, a royal guard, called. Every person in the archive looked up. Evelyn slowly placed the document in her hand back on the table. "That depends," she said. "Is this a good visit or the kind where I accidentally offended someone important?" The guard tried not to smile. "His Majesty requests your presence." The room went completely still. An Omega assistant being summoned by the Alpha King was not something people ignored. Evelyn glanced at the old archivist beside her. "Do you think he wants to discuss the dramatic teacup?" The old man immediately looked away. "I value my employment too much to answer that question." Minutes later, Evelyn walked through the palace corridors toward the royal chambers. She passed paintings of former Alpha Kings, each one carrying the same message: strength, control, duty. But when she reached Adrian Blackthorne's office, she noticed something different. The room was impressive, but it did not feel warm. The fireplace was lit, yet the space still felt cold. Adrian stood beside a large window overlooking Frostvale territory. "Miss Hartwell," he said. "Your Majesty." Evelyn waited. She expected a warning. Maybe a lecture about speaking freely in front of the council. Instead, Adrian asked, "Why did you laugh last night?" Evelyn blinked. "That is your first question?" "Yes." "Because the document was funny." Adrian looked at her as if nobody had ever answered him so simply. Most people would not laugh during a royal ceremony. Most people probably did not notice the writer spent 3 pages describing a missing teacup like a national emergency. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Adrian's expression changed slightly. Not a smile. Not yet. But something almost reached his eyes. Shadow stirred again inside him. The wolf recognized the feeling before Adrian wanted to admit it. Interest. Connection. Something dangerously close to comfort. Adrian turned away. "You are unusual." Evelyn folded her hands. "I have heard that before. It was not meant as criticism." "That is good. Most compliments from powerful people sound like warnings." A quiet breath escaped Adrian. Lucian, standing near the door, noticed it immediately. The beta had served Adrian for years. He knew every small change, every hesitation, every moment where the king almost became the man he used to be. Later that day, Evelyn was assigned to organize several restricted archive records connected to old pack traditions. She did not know the assignment came directly from Adrian. She also did not know he had been watching the security reports more carefully than usual. The council noticed too. An Omega from a minor pack should not have private access to royal records, Lady Seraphina Crow said during the evening meeting. Adrian remained silent. "She has done nothing wrong," Lucian replied. Seraphina lowered her gaze. "That is not the concern. The concern is that the king has not looked at anyone this way in 10 years. Adrian's expression hardened. "Be careful with your assumptions." But when he returned to his private chambers later that night, Shadow reacted again. The wolf inside him paced quietly, not from anger, but from a feeling Adrian had spent years avoiding. The bond was waking, and for the first time in a decade, the Alpha King wondered if the person who could change his life was not someone powerful, not someone chosen by the council, but simply an Omega woman who laughed at a forgotten teacup and refused to be afraid of him. For the next several days, Evelyn Hartwell noticed something strange about Frostvale Palace. People were still afraid of the Alpha King. Guards still stood straighter when Adrian Blackthorne entered a room. Council members still measured every word before speaking. Nothing about the palace had changed on the surface, but something underneath had shifted. Adrian was paying attention. It started with small things. He asked about archive schedules. He noticed when Evelyn skipped lunch because she was too focused on restoring old records. He even remembered that she preferred tea with honey instead of sugar after hearing her mention it once. Evelyn found it confusing. The same man who could silence an entire council chamber with one look was somehow noticing whether she had eaten. "You know," Evelyn said one afternoon while organizing a collection of ancient pact documents. "For someone who barely talks, you ask a surprising amount of questions." Adrian stood across the table, holding a damaged record from the royal archives. "Do I?" "Yes. Yesterday you asked why I was working late. This morning you asked if my hand hurt from writing too much. Now you are staring at a pile of old documents like they personally offended you." Adrian looked at the papers. "They are disorganized." Evelyn smiled. "That might be the most Alpha King answer I have ever heard." A small silence followed. Then something unexpected happened. Adrian almost smiled. Almost. It disappeared quickly, but Evelyn saw it. She saw the tiny change in his expression. The way his shoulders relaxed for 1 second. The way he looked less like a king and more like a man who had forgotten what peace felt like. "There," Evelyn said quietly. Adrian looked up. "What?" "Nothing. You were going to say something." Evelyn closed the folder. "I was going to say I think you almost smiled." The room became still. Adrian's face returned to its usual calm. "You are mistaken." "Maybe." Evelyn tilted her head. "But I am very good at noticing things people try to hide." That sentence stayed with him long after she left. Because Adrian knew she was right. She noticed everything. Things that powerful people ignored. The tiredness behind his eyes. The way he touched old battle records, but never opened them. The way Shadow became calmer whenever she was near. That evening, Adrian met with Lucian in the private council room. "You are changing," Lucian said. Adrian looked at him coldly. "No, you asked me yesterday if the archive staff had enough heating during winter. That was a practical concern." Lucian raised an eyebrow. You have ruled Frostvale for 10 years. You have never asked about archive heating. Adrian looked away. She is different. Lucian became quiet. He understood immediately. The bond. Adrian did not answer. He did not need to. Both men knew what it meant. A mate bond was not something an alpha could order away. It was not a political agreement. It was not a strategy. It was something deeper, something instinctive. And that terrified Adrian more than any enemy ever had. Because he could control a kingdom. He could control a council. He could control his own emotions. But he could not control the way Shadow reacted when Evelyn walked into a room. Meanwhile, Evelyn discovered something hidden inside an old royal record. A page had been removed years ago. The missing section was connected to the night Adrian became colder, the night he stopped smiling. She ran her fingers over the damaged paper and felt a strange emotion left behind. Regret, fear, betrayal. Someone had hidden the truth. And suddenly Evelyn realized something important. Adrian Blackthorne was not a man without feelings. He was a man who had been protecting a secret for 10 years. The question was not why he stopped smiling. The question was who convinced him he was never allowed to smile again. The missing page from the Royal Archive was not just an old piece of paper. Evelyn Hartwell could feel that much before she even finished examining it. The moment her fingers touched the worn edge of the document, a wave of emotion passed through her. Not fear, not anger, something heavier. Regret. The kind of regret someone carried when they wished they had spoken sooner. Evelyn pulled her hand back slowly. What happened here? She whispered. The archive around her remained quiet, but the question stayed in the air. For years, everyone in Frostvale believed they understood Alpha King Adrian Blackthorne. They believed he became cold because he wanted power. They believed the silence, the distance, and the strict control were simply part of being a great alpha. But Evelyn was starting to see something different. Adrian was not empty. He was wounded by something nobody was allowed to discuss. The next morning, Evelyn brought the damaged record to Lucian Vale. The beta looked at the missing section and immediately became serious. Where did you find this? He asked. Hidden behind a false cover in the archive. Lucian was silent for a moment. Some things in this palace were hidden for a reason. Evelyn looked at him carefully. That does not mean they were hidden for the right reason. Lucian almost smiled. He had heard many people speak about Adrian. Advisors praised his strength. Nobles admired his discipline. Enemies respected his power. But Evelyn was the first person in years who looked at the king and asked what he had lost. Before Lucian could answer, the doors opened. Adrian entered. His eyes moved from Lucian to the document in Evelyn's hands. The room changed instantly. Where did you get that? Adrian asked. His voice was calm, but Evelyn noticed the difference. The calm was forced. She stepped forward. It was hidden in the archive. Adrian looked at the page. For a brief moment, his expression changed. Not anger. Pain. Then it disappeared. Some records are better left untouched. Evelyn held his gaze. Maybe. But some secrets become heavier when nobody talks about them. Lucian quietly left the room, giving them privacy. Adrian walked toward the window. You do not understand what you are asking. Then help me understand. The answer surprised him. Most people backed away when he warned them. Evelyn moved closer. Not too close. Just enough to show she was not afraid. Everyone in this palace sees the Alpha King, she said. The title, the crown, the responsibility. But I think nobody has asked what Adrian needed before he became the king everyone fears. For a moment, Adrian said nothing. Outside the window, Frostvale's snowy mountains stretched across the horizon. Finally, he spoke. 10 years ago, I learned that trust can destroy a kingdom. Evelyn listened. Adrian rarely shared anything about the past. Every word felt like something carefully locked away. I believed someone completely, he continued. I believed they cared about this pack. I believed they would protect what we built together. His hand tightened slightly around the old document. I was wrong. Evelyn felt the sadness behind those words. Not just betrayal. Loneliness. Adrian had spent 10 years convincing himself that feelings were dangerous because caring meant giving someone the power to hurt him. But before she could respond, a voice interrupted them. Your Majesty. A council messenger stood at the doorway. The council has requested an emergency meeting. Adrian's expression returned to the familiar mask. The king appeared again. The man disappeared. As he walked away, Shadow reacted quietly inside him. Not with fear, with frustration. The wolf did not want him to leave Evelyn behind. It had already recognized what Adrian was still fighting against. She was not a weakness. She was the first person in 10 years who made him want to be more than a king. And somewhere inside Frostvale Palace, someone else had realized the same thing. Someone who did not want the Alpha King to change. The emergency council meeting began before sunrise, and by the time Adrian Blackthorne entered the chamber, everyone was already waiting. The long stone table was surrounded by the leaders of Frostvale Pack, each one carrying the same concern. The Alpha King was changing. They did not say it directly, but Adrian could feel it in the way they watched him. For 10 years, they had trusted the distance between him and everyone else. They believed a king without personal attachments was impossible to manipulate. Now, one Omega from the Royal Archive had created a question nobody wanted to answer. The issue is not her position, Lady Seraphina Crow said calmly. The issue is influence. Adrian looked at her. Explain. Seraphina placed a document on the table. An unknown Omega with access to royal records. An unusual connection with the Alpha King's wolf. And private meetings that no one outside this room understands. The council members exchanged quiet looks. Lucian Vale remained silent beside Adrian, but his expression revealed his frustration. Evelyn Hartwell has done nothing against Frostvale, Lucian said. She has helped organize the archives, restored damaged records, and discovered information that was forgotten for years. Exactly, another council member replied. Information that should have remained forgotten. Adrian's eyes narrowed. Be careful. The room became quiet. Everyone knew that tone. It was the voice of the Alpha King. Controlled. Dangerous. Final. But beneath that calm expression, Adrian felt something else. A familiar pressure. The instinct to protect. Not the throne. Not the pack. Her. That realization unsettled him more than the council's accusations. Later that afternoon, Evelyn found Adrian in the palace garden. The winter air was cold, but the quiet space between the trees felt peaceful. She stopped when she saw him standing alone. I heard the council meeting did not go well. Adrian looked at her. You hear too much. Evelyn smiled slightly. Working in an archive teaches you something. Old documents are not the only things that leave clues. For a moment, Adrian almost smiled again. Then his expression became serious. They believe you are a risk. Evelyn looked down at the snow-covered path. Are they right? The question caught him off guard. No. Then why do you sound like you are trying to convince yourself? Adrian had no answer. Evelyn stepped closer. Your Majesty, I know everyone sees me as an Omega from a small pack. I know I am not someone the council expected near the throne. She looked directly at him. But I am not here because I want power. Adrian watched her carefully. Then why are you here? Evelyn thought for a moment. Because someone should remind you that you are allowed to be a person. The words hit harder than any criticism. Adrian looked away. For years, everyone had told him what he needed to become. Stronger, colder, more distant. Nobody had ever asked who he wanted to be. That evening, something unexpected happened in the royal courtyard. Adrian's wolf shadow appeared more openly than usual, reacting to Evelyn's presence. The palace guards noticed. The servants noticed. The rumors spread within hours. The Alpha King's wolf had chosen someone. The next morning, the entire palace knew. The mate bond was no longer just a feeling hidden between Adrian and Shadow. It had become a political matter. Evelyn found herself surrounded by whispers. Some called her lucky. Others called her dangerous. And for the first time, Adrian understood the price of allowing someone close. The same connection that brought warmth back into his life had also placed a target on the person who made him remember how to feel. That night, Adrian stood alone in his chambers, looking at the city lights beyond the window. Lucian entered quietly. You know what happens next. Adrian did not turn around. The council will try to separate us. Yes. A long silence followed. Then Adrian finally spoke. 10 years ago, I lost someone because I trusted the wrong person. His voice became quieter. I will not make the same mistake again. Outside the door, Evelyn heard only the last sentence. She did not hear the fear behind it. She did not hear the promise. But Shadow did. And for the first time in 10 years, the Alpha King's wolf was certain of one thing. Adrian Blackthorne was no longer fighting the bond. He was fighting the fear of losing it. The rumors spread through Frostvale faster than the winter wind. By the end of the week, every corner of the palace had heard the same story. The Alpha King's wolf had chosen an Omega from the royal archive. Some called it destiny. Others called it a threat. Evelyn Hartwell heard every version of the rumor while carrying old records through the palace halls. She tried to ignore the whispers, but it was difficult when people stopped talking the moment she walked by. "You would think I stole the crown," Evelyn said quietly to herself. "Not organized a few dusty books." A small smile appeared on her face, but it disappeared when she entered the archive and found Adrian Blackthorne waiting inside. The Alpha King stood beside the old shelves, holding one of the records she had restored. He looked exactly the same as always. Calm, controlled, impossible to read. But Evelyn had learned something about him. The smallest changes mattered. "You came here yourself?" she asked. Adrian looked at the document in his hand. "I wanted to see the restoration work." Evelyn glanced around the empty archive. "You mean you wanted to see if I was secretly replacing royal history with jokes about teacups?" For a second, Adrian's expression softened. "You still remember that?" "Of course. It was an important historical event." Adrian looked at her. "A missing teacup?" "A very dramatic missing teacup." The silence that followed was different from before. Months ago, that silence would have felt cold. Now, it felt almost comfortable. Adrian placed the document down. "The council believes the bond is influencing my decisions." Evelyn's smile faded. She knew this conversation would come eventually. "And what do you believe?" Adrian looked away. That was answer enough. "I do not know," he admitted. The honesty surprised her. The Alpha King, the man who always had an answer, finally admitted uncertainty. "For 10 years, I believed control was the only way to protect Frostvale," Adrian said. "Every choice I made was about preventing another mistake." Evelyn studied him carefully. "But now you are afraid that caring about someone will make you weak." Adrian did not deny it. Because she was right. Evelyn stepped closer to the table. "Adrian, strength is not pretending you have nothing to lose." Hearing his name from her was different. Everyone else called him Your Majesty. Alpha King. Leader. She was the only person who spoke to him like he was simply Adrian. "You do not understand pack politics," he said quietly. Evelyn nodded. "Maybe I do not understand all of it. But I understand people." Before Adrian could answer, the doors opened. Lucian entered with a serious expression. "Your Majesty, we have a problem." Adrian immediately returned to the role everyone knew. The king appeared again. "What happened?" Lucian handed him a report. "Several council members are requesting a formal review of Evelyn's position in the palace." Evelyn felt her chest tighten. "A review?" Lucian nodded. "They claim an unknown Omega should not have access to royal records or influence over the Alpha King." Adrian's expression hardened. But this time, Evelyn noticed something different. The anger was not directed at her. It was directed at the unfairness of the situation. "They are questioning her because she is different," Adrian said. Lucian remained silent. Adrian looked at Evelyn. "I will handle this." Evelyn shook her head slightly. No, both men looked at her. "If you solve every problem because you are the Alpha King, they will only prove their point." Adrian frowned. "What are you suggesting?" Evelyn picked up the old archive record. "Let them ask questions. Let them see what I have actually done." Her voice was calm. "I am not asking you to protect me from the pack. I am asking you to trust me." Those words reached deeper than she expected. Adrian had spent 10 years believing trust was a weakness. Yet here was Evelyn, standing in front of him, asking for trust instead of protection. That night, the council announced the official inquiry into Evelyn Hartwell's role within Frostvale Palace. But what they did not know was that Evelyn had already discovered something hidden in the old records. Someone had been changing royal history long before she arrived. And the truth behind Adrian's lost smile was closer than anyone realized. The council chamber had never felt so crowded. Not because more people had arrived, but because everyone had something to prove. The members of Frostvale Pack sat around the long table, watching Evelyn Hartwell stand alone before them. She was not wearing a royal gown. She did not have a noble family name behind her. She stood there in a simple blue dress with a stack of restored records in her hands, and the same calm expression that had confused the entire palace from the beginning. "Miss Hartwell," Lady Seraphina Crowe said, her voice polite but firm, "you understand why this review is necessary." Evelyn looked around the chamber. "Because I am an Omega?" The room became quiet. Seraphina paused. "Because you are connected to the Alpha King." Evelyn nodded slowly. "That sounds more honest." Across the room, Adrian Blackthorne remained silent. Every instinct inside him wanted to end the discussion. He could have done it with one sentence. He was the Alpha King. His word carried authority, but Evelyn had asked him for something more difficult than protection. She had asked him to trust her. So he stayed quiet. He let her speak. "I did not enter Frostvale Palace to gain influence," Evelyn said. "I came here because I was asked to restore records that were damaged and forgotten." She placed a document on the table. But while doing that, I discovered something important. One of the council members leaned forward. "And what would that be?" Evelyn opened the old record. Parts of Frostvale's history were changed. The room shifted instantly. Even Adrian looked surprised. "Changed how?" Lucian asked. Evelyn pointed to the pages. Names removed. Events rewritten. Decisions made by previous leaders that no longer matched the official records. Seraphina's expression became more serious. "You are accusing the Royal Archive of corruption?" "No," Evelyn replied. "I am saying someone wanted the pack to remember only one version of the truth." Adrian watched her carefully. This was the same woman who laughed at a forgotten teacup. The same woman who refused to fear him. But now she stood before the highest leaders of Frostvale and defended the truth without hesitation. Shadow reacted quietly inside him. Pride. A feeling Adrian had not allowed himself to feel in years. The council continued questioning Evelyn, but each answer made their doubts weaker. She explained every discovery clearly. She did not attack anyone. She did not demand power. She simply showed the facts. Finally, Lucian placed another document on the table. "There is more." Everyone turned toward him. These missing records connect to the period 10 years ago. Adrian's expression changed immediately. Evelyn noticed. The room became heavier. The past was no longer just a secret between Adrian and his memories. It was connected to the entire pack. "That was the year the Alpha King changed," one elder whispered. Adrian looked down. He hated that sentence because it was true. 10 years ago, he had stopped laughing. He had stopped trusting. He had become exactly what everyone expected him to be. A perfect alpha. A distant ruler. A man who never needed anyone. Evelyn looked at him. For a moment, she saw the person behind the title again. Not the king. Not the symbol. Adrian. After the meeting ended, Evelyn found him outside the council chamber. Snow fell quietly over the palace gardens. "You knew this would happen," Adrian said. Evelyn looked confused. "Knew what?" "That standing beside me would make people question you." She looked down for a moment, then back at him. "Yes." Adrian was surprised by her honesty. "And you still stayed." Evelyn smiled softly. "You are not the only one who is allowed to choose something difficult." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Adrian finally asked the question he had been avoiding. "Why do you believe in me?" Evelyn answered without hesitation. "Because everyone keeps telling me what kind of king you are. But I have spent enough time around old records to know something." She held his gaze. "The truth is usually hidden beneath the version everyone repeats." Adrian had no response. Because for the first time in 10 years, someone was not trying to fix him. She was simply seeing him. But as they stood there, a messenger hurried across the courtyard with urgent news. A new discovery had been made in the Royal Archive. A hidden letter connected to the night Adrian lost his smile had been found. And this time, the truth could no longer stay buried. The hidden letter was found beneath the oldest section of the Frostvale Archive, inside a sealed compartment that had remained untouched for 10 years. When Evelyn Hartwell first saw the envelope, she immediately felt the weight of the emotion trapped inside it. Not fear, not anger, something much more painful. A final attempt to tell the truth before someone decided the truth was too dangerous. The Royal Archive room was silent as Adrian Blackthorne stood beside the table. For once, the Alpha King looked uncertain. Evelyn had seen him face council members, political pressure, and endless responsibilities without hesitation. But this small envelope made him look like a man standing in front of a memory he had spent years avoiding. Lucian Vale carefully opened the seal. Inside was a single letter. "This handwriting," Lucian whispered. Adrian looked away. "I know." Evelyn noticed the change immediately. "Who wrote it?" Adrian did not answer at first. Then he quietly said, "Someone who believed I deserved to know the truth." The letter revealed what happened 10 years earlier. The event that changed Adrian was not a simple betrayal. It was a misunderstanding created by people who wanted control over Frostvale. Information had been hidden. Decisions had been manipulated. And Adrian had carried the blame for something he never fully understood. "I thought I failed my pack," Adrian said softly. The words surprised everyone. The Alpha King rarely admitted mistakes. "I thought if I had been stronger, smarter, colder, none of it would have happened. Evelyn looked at him. So you punished yourself for 10 years. Adrian remained silent. Because she was right. He had turned responsibility into a prison. He believed a perfect alpha could prevent every loss, every mistake, every disappointment. But no leader could carry an entire pack alone. The discovery changed everything. The council could no longer pretend the past was simple. The same people who questioned Evelyn now had to face the possibility that the history they protected was incomplete. But not everyone accepted the truth easily. Lady Seraphina Crow found Evelyn in the archive later that evening. You realize what happens now? Seraphina asked. Evelyn closed the record book in front of her. The truth comes out. Seraphina shook her head. The truth changes people. And people do not always like change. Evelyn studied her carefully. You still think I am the problem? Seraphina looked toward the palace windows. I think Adrian has spent 10 years building a kingdom around control. And you are the first person who made him question it. Is that a bad thing? Evelyn asked. Seraphina did not answer. Because part of her knew it was not. Across the palace, Adrian stood alone in the throne room. The same room where he had made countless decisions. The same room where he had convinced himself that emotions had no place in leadership. Shadow moved quietly inside him. The wolf was calmer now. Almost peaceful. For years, Adrian had believed his wolf was something dangerous that needed control. But Evelyn had shown him something different. The wolf was not his weakness. It was the part of him that still remembered how to care. The next morning, Adrian made a decision that shocked the entire pack. He ordered the royal records opened for review. No more hidden pages. No more protected secrets. Frostvale would finally face its own history. When Lucian asked if he was certain, Adrian looked toward the archive windows where Evelyn was already working. A king who hides the truth cannot ask his people to trust him. It was the first time in years that Adrian chose honesty over appearance. But the decision came with a cost. The council members who benefited from the old secrets began moving against him. They could not control a king who no longer feared his own past. And they could not accept the woman who helped him find his voice again. That evening, Evelyn found Adrian outside the palace gardens. Snow covered the path between them. You changed the entire kingdom's history today, she said. Adrian gave a quiet answer. No, he looked at her. You reminded me that history belongs to everyone, not just those who have power. For a moment, the silence between them felt different. Warmer. Safer. Then Shadow reacted, and Evelyn noticed something she had never seen before. Adrian's eyes softened completely. Not almost. Not briefly. Completely. But before either of them could say anything more, a message arrived from the Northern Territories. Several pack leaders were questioning Adrian's leadership. The past had been revealed. Now the future of Frostvale had to be decided. For the first time in 10 years, the people of Frostvale saw their Alpha King stand before them without hiding behind silence. The Great Hall was filled with pack leaders from every territory, each one waiting to see what Adrian Blackthorn would do. Some expected anger. Some expected a command. Some expected the same cold ruler who had carried the crown like a shield for a decade. But when Adrian stepped forward, he did something no one expected. He admitted the truth. For 10 years, I believed being an alpha meant never showing uncertainty, Adrian said. His voice carried through the hall. I believed strength meant carrying every burden alone. The room remained completely quiet. I was wrong. The words surprised everyone, including the council members who had built their influence around his silence. Evelyn Hartwell stood among the archive staff near the back of the room. She did not need to be beside the throne to understand what this moment meant. Adrian was not trying to appear perfect anymore. He was choosing to be honest. A pack does not follow a leader because that leader never struggles, Adrian continued. A pack follows a leader who is willing to face the truth, even when that truth is difficult. The alpha leaders exchanged uncertain looks. For generations, many packs had believed that an alpha had to be untouchable, but Adrian was showing them something different. A leader could be strong and still be human. A king could listen without losing authority. After the meeting, Frostvale began to change. The royal archives were opened. Old records were reviewed. The pack learned the full story behind the decisions made 10 years earlier. Those who had hidden information were held accountable, not through revenge, but through justice and responsibility. Adrian refused to destroy anyone to prove he was powerful. Instead, he rebuilt trust piece by piece. Lucian Vale watched the changes with quiet pride. You realize, he said one evening, standing beside Adrian in the palace courtyard. The old Adrian would have hated this much uncertainty. Adrian looked across the snowy gardens. The old Adrian thought control was the same thing as safety. Lucian smiled slightly. And the new Adrian? Adrian looked toward Evelyn, who was helping young archive workers organize the newly opened records. The new Adrian understands that trust cannot exist without allowing people to see the truth. Months passed, and Frostvale slowly became a different kind of kingdom. Not a weaker one, a stronger one. Because the people no longer followed a symbol. They followed a leader they believed in. Evelyn never became important because of a title. She never needed a crown to prove her worth. She remained the same person who laughed at a ridiculous teacup story, who challenged a king to look beyond his own walls, and who reminded an entire pack that kindness was not weakness. One evening, Adrian found her in the archive, surrounded by old books and unfinished notes. "You know," Evelyn said, looking up, "for someone who once avoided every emotion, you spend a lot of time smiling now." Adrian looked at her. A real smile appeared, the kind nobody in Frostvale had seen for 10 years. "I suppose I had forgotten how." Evelyn closed the book in front of her. "And now," Adrian thought for a moment, "now I remember." Outside, the lights of Frostvale shone across the snow-covered valley. The pack had learned that loyalty was not built through fear. Power was not measured by how much someone could control. And love was not a weakness that made a leader fall. It was the reason a leader chose to stand. Adrian Blackthorn remained the Alpha King. The throne was still his responsibility. The pack still needed his strength. But he was no longer a man trapped behind a crown. He was a king who understood that the greatest leaders were not those who never broke. They were the ones who found the courage to heal, to trust, and to smile again. And for Frostvale, the sound of that forgotten smile became the reminder that even the coldest hearts could return to warmth when someone was brave enough to see the person hidden beneath the title.